you?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, other than, mild technical difficulties got me all
Yeah,
nervous.
we're all struggling with those during COVID. So,
Oh, I know, and I feel like it's never ending. Like, it's one device this, one device that, make sure I'm on the right account here and the right account there, and
we're all
fun.
going to be brilliant and technologically savvy after this. So,
That's the hope. I
yeah.
think I've, learned a few
Yeah.
interesting new technical skills. I know more about my computer than I ever thought I wanted to.
Yes.
But how are you? What are you up to right now? How is COVID have you working at home or?
COVID has me working at home. I'm really lucky. I work for a firm that is very technologically savvy, and I'm doing my best to get on board. They have us all set up from home, but of course we still have the ability to go into the office and are taking the utmost precautions with everything. So that's really been great. Um, but right now, tomorrow I'm getting ready to move apartments.
Ooh.
So this is very exciting for me. Another new event during COVID. So my actual home that I'm in right now is sort of in disarray with a bunch of boxes and all ready to go.
Gotcha. Well, that's exciting. I'm glad you're moving. Kind of fun. Yeah. Nice change I'm sure after being locked in the same place for 6 months, you're ready to get out.
I am definitely ready for a change of scenery, and it's not too far. It's only about 8 blocks away. So that's good.
Yeah. Good. So you're not leaving because you live in Baltimore. You're local, right?
I live in Washington, D.C. I lived in Baltimore for about 15 years. And then I was living in Anne Arundel County for a little while, and then moved to D.C. about 5 years ago.
Gotcha.
So then I'm still you can tell from the McClintock behind me, I'm still a huge fan of Baltimore.
God, were you originally from Maryland? Because I know that I read that you went to law school in Baltimore, correct?
Yes.
And Goucher, obviously. So did you want to stay in the Baltimore area? You just really like it there? Or have you kind of grown up around here?
I originally am from the Poconos, which is Northeast Pennsylvania. So I wanted to move to Maryland to go to Goucher. That's what brought me to Maryland. I saw the campus and I absolutely fell in love with the campus. And then that same weekend that I came to visit, we explored Baltimore and DC, and I fell in love with the area. So after I graduated Goucher, there was no doubt in my mind. I wanted to stay in this area. And I've had the best of both worlds, living in Baltimore and now in DC.
Yeah, I feel like they're very different, but all both very lovely in their own respects.
Exactly. And
I'm from Maryland, so I have been to them. I go to Goucher now, obviously. So I'm glad you moved here. It's an awesome place.
Yes. And being from Maryland, don't you just enjoy watching everything that's kind of growing in Baltimore and DC? It's
amazing to see.
Yeah.
There's been some crazy changes since I want to say elementary school, younger, watching these places grow, and even some of the smaller towns and little cities really blooming at this point.
Yeah. The Eastern Shore, and Maryland has a lot to offer. So it's close to DC. It's still close to Pennsylvania for me to go visit everyone. And the main office for our firm is in Philadelphia. So it's all East Coast. It's all good.
I like the East Coast. I'm pretty partial to it. I don't plan on moving away anytime soon. So I definitely get that. So then when you were choosing a law school, did you pick based on what was local? Or did you apply to some of the crazy ones and just kind of go where you got in?
I really wanted to go to University of Baltimore because I heard that when I graduated, I would be ready to hit the ground running as a practicing attorney. And where I kind of figured that out was I worked for a law firm in between when I graduated from Goucher and then applying to law school. I worked at Schlockman, Belsky & Wiener in downtown Baltimore. And everyone that I talked to there spoke really highly of the University of Baltimore and said that I would get a lot of very practical learning there and be ready to start practicing when I graduated. And I really was. I think the day after I was sworn in, or maybe it was a few days later, I was in court and I felt really prepared. So
That's crazy that it moved that fast for you.
yeah.
Very cool, but crazy. So how did you get, I guess, from there to where you are now? I'm not super knowledgeable about like the process of being a lawyer, but I know some of our other students are looking into going into law, and sort of what is the process of sort of you graduated Goucher, it seems you like had some sort of job between the two, and then you went to law school, and then did you go right into like being a full practicing lawyer? Did you work under like different people? How did you navigate that?
Well, it was sort of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. So, I had to try out a couple different things before I really found where I wanted to be. And by that, I mean, I worked for a few solo practitioners. Then I worked for a medium-sized firm. I knew that I did not want to work for a large firm. There are a lot of very large, amazing firms in the area, but I wanted to be in a courtroom right away. And I really didn't want to be researching for a couple years. And that's kind of how things were in those days. You had to pay your dues before you could get into the courtroom. So I worked for a medium-sized firm. And then I decided, I'm kind of, I would say, halfway through my career. And I had really this strong desire to work in public policy as something, in a role as something other than volunteer. So I decided to take a year off, and I was living in D.C. and I went to work for the Embassy of Australia in D.C., which was diplomacy, which is very different than litigation. Worked for them for a year, really enjoyed that, but missed being in the courtroom and missed litigating and missed mediation and the other aspects of actually practicing law. And so decided to go back to it. And that's how I ended up at Petrelli Previtera.
Gotcha. When I was reading about you, I thought that was a really interesting change of scenery, like working in a position of that compared to being in a lawyer. Did you learn things from that you think like have furthered your career as a lawyer? Do you feel like you grew from it, or was just kind of like, oh, tried that, didn't like it, gonna move on?
No, I actually learned a lot working at the embassy. It is so difficult. I think especially, it's easy to walk into a room and be very argumentative, and to walk into a room and be diplomatic and to try to keep your calm, even though you may completely disagree with the person. So watching the minister counselors and watching the different branch heads that were there negotiate, be diplomatic. There were so many skills that I improved on that I'll take with me to mediation and also to the courtroom. I also learned how hard it is to not be argumentative, not be political, but still kind of get what you want. So there's a lot of actually people with law backgrounds that work in embassies. So it wasn't necessarily an odd fit, but it definitely was not the same as being in a courtroom. So, I also learned, I think my writing really, really improved working for the embassy, because I was put in situations where I was kind of taken out of my comfort zone as far as drafting the same old form pleadings, and had to learn new skills. And without a doubt, my technology, my technological ability definitely improved working for the embassy, because that's a whole different ballgame than kind of working for a small law firm.
Gotcha. Yeah, it seems very different, but it seems like you've really carried some really awesome skills back to working in a law firm. So
Yeah.
what in this law firm that you're working in now, what do you focus on? Like, what is your main focus when you're there?
We are a family law firm, which was kind of, that was one of my kind of like checks on my list for going back to practicing law. I wanted to solely be in a firm where I was just practicing family law, and that's what they do. And I wanted to do it really well with a group of people who love family law as much as I do. And I think after 23 years of practicing, I had finally narrowed it down. I'm like, this is my thing. This is what I like. This is the area of law that works for me. I enjoy reading about it, which when you're an attorney, you've got to constantly educate yourself on what is coming out new as far as statutory, but also case law. So you really need to pick an area of the law that you enjoy. And this firm is it. We live, breathe, eat family law.
That's very cool. When you were in law school, did you get the chance to like try out different types? Or did you really get the chance to try those out after you had left?
I would say UB did a great job of exposing us to a whole bunch of different areas of law. And in that respect, it was sort of like Goucher. I was exposed to so many different disciplines that I could have gone into, so many different topics. And the professors at UB were a lot like the professors at Goucher. They really encouraged conversation. Their door was always open. It wasn't such a big school that you needed to make like an appointment 5 months in advance to be able to go in and actually talk with your professor. And it helped prepare me to know that what I wanted to do was work for like a solo who kind of did a couple different areas of law. And I started out in criminal. Which, yeah, I quickly learned was not what I wanted to do. But I worked for a great attorney in Midtown Baltimore. Learned a lot about criminal, personal injury, workman's comp. And he saw that I had an interest in family law and he encouraged it. And then I went on to work for an attorney who was also an accountant in Towson, which working with people with multiple degrees is, you get such a different perspective. So
I was going to say, the accounting and law, I wouldn't necessarily tie them into being similar.
Right,
yes.
Right. And he always said, his name was Irv Brodsky, he always said that he had a misguided youth. So he's like, you're just having a misguided youth. You'll figure out what kind of family law you want to do. Yeah.
So are there different aspects of family law, and are there ones that you prefer to focus on?
Yes. It's interesting because when I talk to people about family law, they think it's just about divorce. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no, you've really got to be a jack of all trades, because I could be working on a divorce case that dealt with custody issues as the main part of the case. You could be dealing with a child that has special medical issues or educational issues that you have to deal with. So you're dealing with doctors, you're dealing with educational experts. Another case, you could be dealing with mental health experts. Another case, you could be working with accountants, forensic accountants, and business valuators because you have a case with several businesses in it. So it's kind of like knowing a lot about a little, or knowing a little bit about a lot, rather. And it goes into so many other disciplines. So this week alone, I've talked to a trust and estates attorney in connection with the case that I'm doing. I talked to a criminal attorney in connection with the case that I'm doing. And I talked to another family law attorney about a case that I'm doing. So you need to really build a network around you of people who are good, who are experts in those different areas.
Yeah, that definitely seems, I didn't realize family law was so complicated and there were so many different aspects of it.
Yeah.
For that sort of multidisciplinary aspect of that, do you feel like your time at Goucher kind of helped that? Because I don't know if previously Goucher had a law program or like a pre-law program. I don't think they currently do. But what did you study there that sort of prepared you to go on to the next step and go to law school and be ready for some of these different aspects of the law that you're studying today?
Well, I think two things. I made a really smart decision to be on the French floor, which I loved. And on the French floor, I met people from all over the world, and they had very different political interests and had different disciplines that they were working in, not just international relations, but several science, math, everything. And then in Goucher, I was an international relations major, which is a little bit about a lot of different things. It's economics, politics, history, conflict resolution. It kind of goes on and on and on. And being exposed to so many different topics keeps you on your toes, and I think prepared me to deal with so many different aspects of family law.
I definitely can see how that would be useful. And I know that a lot of people at Goucher do IR if they're planning to go into law school. That's a pretty common track. Did you do any internships? I know that you worked between Goucher and law school, but were there any like internships or things like that that you got involved with while at Goucher?
Yeah, it's funny, when I had to fill out my paperwork for the embassy, I had to kind of go back years.
Oh,
And
wow.
I found my original application to the bar for Maryland, and it had listed my internships and things like that I had done. One of the internships that Goucher got me that is still so relevant today was I was working for the Mayor's Coordinating Council on Criminal Justice. And it was during the time period where Mayor Schmoke was trying to get marijuana decriminalized. And that was, many, many, many years ago. And now to kind of converse with younger people who are growing up in an age where in several places it's legal, they find it interesting to hear about kind of what the early stages were talking about that. So that was a very interesting internship and completely out of my comfort zone. Because of the subject matter, and it was the criminal counsel. So there were several different areas of criminal law that were interesting as well. And then another internship that I had that I thought was great, that I think I had after Goucher, but that Goucher helped me get, was with the Attorney General's office in the educational division. And again, I didn't really have a desire to go into educational law, but I really wanted to work for the AG's office. And when you work for an organization like that, you're not just learning about the educational division, their educational affairs division, you're learning about the other divisions as well. So Goucher hooked me up with some really cool experiences.
It sounds like it. That's very neat. And I also feel like it gave you a little bit of taste of some of the different areas of law, and maybe gave you a little bit more of a thought of like, okay, no, this isn't for me, or oh, this was really interesting, maybe I'll do that a little more. So that is really cool. I'm glad you had those experiences. And it seems like you've been pretty set on law for a while. Was it something you came into Goucher knowing like, yeah, I want to go to law school, I'm going to be a lawyer, this is my plan? Or did like something influence that decision along the way?
I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I got to Goucher. I wasn't sure if it was law or, of course, I kind of had these notions of, I'll go work for a think tank in DC. But of course, think tanks really want you to have kind of, some background and some skills before they hire you to be an expert. So when I did some informational interviews, which I did through the Career Center, they hooked me up with people in DC that were in the careers I was thinking about. They were all kind of saying the same thing, which was, have you thought about law school? And I don't think I necessarily thought of law school to become a litigator, but talking with those people led me down a different path that then led me to something that I love. So that's why I would just say, keep an open mind when at Goucher about what you're studying and what you're going to do, and maybe when you were 18 and entered, you thought you were going to be something, and then by the time you graduate, you've chosen a different path. But it's a place where you can do that. It's a very supportive place of finding yourself, which is what I think I needed for a college experience.
I agree. I definitely needed the same type of experience. And it's from a lot of the people we've had coffee chats with recently, it's been that maybe I didn't know exactly, but it helped me kind of find my way, build the skills I needed to help me throughout the different positions I pursued, such as like when you were working at the embassy versus where you are now, like getting those different skills in like undergrad to be able to go on to different things and explore different aspects and have kind of a non-linear career, even if that wasn't what you were planning. And
Yeah.
so also, I know that you said that you were on the French floor, which is really cool. And we still have those. I don't know if we still have French, but I know for sure we still have Spanish. I know a lot of people that love that experience. Were there any other things like clubs or different activities, maybe sports, you were involved at Goucher?
I tried to be as active as I could in as many clubs. And I really tried to, and that was encouraged by a lot of the upperclassmen that I met. But I also just tried to take advantage of when a club was putting on an event. If I wasn't necessarily a part of the club, I'd go to the event. And that's a great way, I think, if you don't have a lot of time, because I was also working full time when I went to Goucher, to be part of a part of all of the clubs you want to be. Going to their events, I think, is just as great. So
Yeah, I'm glad you used that to get involved, even if you weren't like an active part of one club or another, because I think that's a way that I didn't really even consider like, oh, I could definitely go to their event that they're having. But definitely something we want more students to do, especially right now with COVID. A lot of clubs aren't meeting like normal, but some are still putting on different like virtual events. And so like go to those, get out, do things like that. Is there anything you've picked up during this sort of like quarantine time when you're kind of stuck at home? I don't know if you're getting to interact with clients as much, or if you even get to, I'm not really sure how the courtroom looks in a virtual setting, if that's just kind of been put on hold. But are there different things you've picked up, different skills since you've been quarantined?
yeah, I'm definitely the computer. Zoom is kind of an all new experience for me. I'm actually getting more interaction with clients.
Really?
Yeah. It's so hard for my clients if they're working or, and then at night they go home, and if they have kids, they have a second job. It's really difficult. It was very difficult for them to make it to appointments. And a lot of times we would conduct business over the telephone. And yeah, I mean, the telephone is fine, but I really enjoy Zoom and the face-to-face contact that I have with them. And so we're actually having more of that now. And I think it's just so much better than trying to do things over the telephone or through emails. And you're also having to really set aside the time to do that, which I think is more convenient for them, because I can Zoom them at 6:00 at night. I can Zoom them at 8:00 in the morning on their lunch hour, whatever works for them. And it's actually working out better. The courtroom experience, I'll say this, it's weird to be wearing a mask and to be arguing, but every concern I had about going back into a courthouse, what I have found is that the courts have really gotten their act together, and they are taking every precaution that they can in screening and social distancing. So that's been really positive. And one thing recently that really was just so positive is that they had their first jury trial in Montgomery County. And the majority of people that were called to serve in jury duty showed up.
That's
Which,
awesome.
yeah, it was really inspiring that people are really still willing to do their civic duty, even though we're in the middle of a pandemic, and I'm sure it was a hardship on them, but they did it. So, we're moving along. We're doing the best we can, but we are moving along.
Yeah, I'm glad that things have been moving, and I guess now knowing that you can talk to clients more often and more face to face using Zoom, do you think that's something you'll incorporate in the future? even when you're back and able to meet with clients in person, do you still think that'll be an integral part of the way you do business?
Absolutely. Because it is, I think the clients appreciate it more. A lot of my clients would have to get a babysitter to watch their kids, because obviously you don't want to bring a kid into a law office when you're meeting with your divorce attorney. In this case, though, they can, stay at home. The kids can be playing in their room or doing their homework or whatever, out of earshot of what's going on. But at the same time, they don't have to travel in. So yeah, I am definitely going to keep the option of having a virtual meeting up.
That's awesome. I like that option. I think it definitely is going to make it easier for a lot of people. And I know we're kind of running close on time, but I wanted to know if there were any advice or things like that you would recommend to students at this point who are kind of considering a law career, or maybe not 100% sure what they're doing, but think they might be interested. What is some advice you would offer them?
Well, two things. Don't worry so much. Okay. Because I think I've worried so much about making the right moves, and every single little thing that I did as far as selecting the right places and where I was going to work, and that is all very important. But it will all work out. It will just all work out. You are surrounded by so many amazing people at Goucher, and there are so many amazing law schools in the area and across the country where they will help young lawyers or young law students figure out what path, they want to take and how to get there. And the other thing that I would highly recommend is University of Baltimore had a summer abroad program in Edinburgh, Scotland, or not Edinburgh, Aberdeen, Scotland, which was amazing. So have fun when you're in law school. At least after that first year. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's both very good things. And I'm one of those people that worries so much about doing the right thing too. So I get that. And also study abroad was the best experience. Yes. And I recommend that to everyone. So it's good to know there are other options for that, because I think you said University of Maryland has one. So did you do that during law school, or did you do that while you were undergrad?
Yeah, University of Maryland and University of Baltimore, when I was at University of Baltimore, teamed up and did this program in Aberdeen. And Very cool. Brought over one American professor and had one from Aberdeen teach. And we were in with law students in Aberdeen. It was just
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was the coolest experience, because it really sets you up for understanding that we all have so much in common, but having a lot of diversity and having a lot of difference of opinion is just going to lead you to having more options as to how to help your clients. So
awesome. And I just think it's really important to note that you can do these study abroad experiences beyond undergrad. It doesn't end there. And I think I don't normally hear about people doing them during law school. So definitely good to let our students know that. But thank you again for joining us today. This was awesome. If you have anything you wanted to follow up with, any questions, feel free to email me. And thank you again. This was great.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You as well. Bye-bye.